All right. Good morning. I'm with Brian Goldner of Talon Metals. Talon is out with news um, on Tuesday morning, an update from the Tamarack project in Minnesota. And there's a lot to unpack in this news release. So we're going to get into it with Brian. Hey, Brian, how are you today?
Hey, Robert. Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Very good. So, look, I saw you in mid-September. You guys showed me around Tamarack. It was a very enjoyable day. I definitely learned a lot. Love the location and the setting of the project. It was really cool to see the rigs there on the drill pads. Um, so let's get into what has happened since mid-September. So when I was there were two rigs, and one of them was turning at the time we visited the drill site. So basically, can you walk us through the timeline of what has happened since mid-September?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were here, like you said, we had two rigs set up. Our limiting factor was kind of twofold. One, we could only get a partial directional drilling crew, so a 12-hour shift. And the second is, Michigan was the priority. So we had all of our crews, all of our rigs, with those two exceptions, in Michigan. So we were progressing Tamarack with essentially a single drill crew and half a shift of directional drilling. And it actually worked out pretty good from an efficiency standpoint, because with 12 hours of directional, when the directional guy isn't there, we can't operate on that rig. So we could take that night shift and put it over on the other rig. So that's why having two rigs worked out. We could progress both drill holes with essentially a split crew like that. And then since your visit, Michigan turned off for the season. We'll be going back there at some point, but winters are really tough there. So we pulled everything back. We got that completed, and now I'm proud to say that we have three rigs and three crews turning at Tamarack in those same areas that you were on site here.
Okay, so when I was there, I believe 63A and 65A were being drilled. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So yesterday's news release, look, there's a lot to unpack. A lot of it was about you guys have had a light bulb moment in terms of the model for the vault zone and what could be going on. A pretty strong hypothesis, if I may say. But let's dig into 63A and 65A. So you said in the news release that 65A did not meet target depth. There was a mechanical failure with the drill. So maybe you could tell us about that. And what did you find in 63A?
Yeah. So 63A, when we got down to the target zone, we were hitting massive sulfide veins. So a lot of smoke. We know that there's something really close nearby. But then as we get deeper into it, those massive sulfides started turning to bornite and chalcocite. And if you look at that press release, that's one of the images is me holding one of those chalcocite veins. It's massive. Chalcocite is a super high grade copper mineral. It's also extremely unusual in nickel systems. It just doesn't make a lot of sense as to why that would be there. And that got us thinking that maybe there's a copper zonation story to this. That's one of the things that we've been talking about and writing about in these press releases, is we are seeing different minerals than we're used to seeing. So we're seeing bornite, we're seeing chalcocite, some cobalt. Those are all very different to Tamarack. And I mean, to put it plainly, I don't think we've ever seen those minerals anywhere else in Tamarack other than the vault zone. So the fact that we're seeing those in a number of holes leads us to think that maybe there's some sort of secondary or hypogene enrichment where a copper fluid is coming in from somewhere else and depositing copper in the sulfides. So that's one of the actual really smoking gun keys of evidence for that is in our sediments we see pyrite cubes, and as we get closer to the vault zone, those pyrite cubes turn into chalcopyrite, they turn into bornite, and then lastly chalcocite. So it's clearly you're adding. This is not a subtraction. You can't make these by subtracting things out. You can only add copper to convert pyrite to these other minerals. So that was one of the big revelations for us. The other one is, we extended some other drill holes, historic drill holes that got down to maybe 600 meters. We pushed them deeper and used those to run geophysics. And that's where some of the geophysical plates have come from, like that big vertical one that I'm sure we're going to talk about.
Okay. And with 65A, that just didn't get to the target zone, huh?
Correct. Yeah. So the rods, anytime you lose a hole like that, it's not one thing. It's a series of issues that all kind of stack together. So the rod snapped, and we went down to go get them. That's a pretty normal thing. But when we went to go get them, we had another failure, and it essentially, like, we stretched on the rods, and then when it snapped, it slingshot everything down and expanded all the joints on the rods. So think of it as like a Chinese finger trap. They're pretty stuck. Now, I think we'll be able to get them out. I just didn't want to spend the time to get them out right now when we could be drilling other holes. So we'll get back down there at some point and try and cut those rods out.
Okay. So the news release said 7 holes have now been drilled into the vault zone. So let me see if I can name them. Hole 50, hole 63, hole 65. Now we have 63A, 65A. A hole 62 is now mentioned in this news release. What's the 7th hole?
Well, 248.
Oh, so the extension of 248 is the 7th hole.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell us about the extension of hole 248 and what you learned in that one.
Yeah. So right when we started drilling 248 in the first box, we, surprise, we hit boronite. And so that was, again, it was like, okay, there's something here. We're hitting this in every single hole. It's going to add to the story. And we pushed that hole down. That was about a 50-meter step out to the north, 40 or 50 meters to the north. We didn't expect it to hit mineralization. We pushed it down to get a better view of the geophysics on the northern side. And we pushed it pretty deep. And when we ran the borehole EM survey, we saw 2 things. We saw the vault zone, clear as day, the high conductivity, area. And then in the borehole EM data, we saw a signature that just didn't decay away. And when you model that up, it models up as a lower conductivity feature that's almost vertical, but it extends hundreds of meters past where the drill hole went. Because we're not seeing any sort of decay, we know it has to persist. And so that's when Brian Banger, who's our chief geophysicist, he spent 5 years at Boise Bay, and he said this looks pretty familiar to him. It looks like things that he's seen at Reed Brook, where this is the emplacement horizon. It's the conduit, essentially. So it doesn't mean that it's seeing mineralization, but it's seeing the conduit or the host where the mineralization could occur. So the idea is, if we can focus our exploration, in the future, on that horizon, then run borehole EM and look for the pods of mineralization like we did with the vault zone. I think that's a really great way to continue exploration. Now, in the short term, we have 7 or so targets of stepping out on the hits that we've had, north, south, east, west, and start to build those intercepts out a little bit to add some size and to understand where those massive sulfides are going. But as we move past that and those get drilled off, this is where we're going to need to continue exploration, is starting to look down underneath and see, again, all the massive sulfide we think is a drainage model. So it's great that the model seems to hold, and now we have a conduit that we've mapped with geophysics that again points down. So we just need to keep looking and keep running geophysics.
So figure 1 in the news release shows this conduit, this pathway that you've interpreted from the geophysics, and it looks to me like this is extending to over 1,000 meters vertical depth. That's probably to the extent of the survey. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the plate probably goes a little bit deeper. One of the things that really, I think, surprised all of us when we extended that hole is how much intrusion there was. Some of those holes, those deep ones that we pushed, haven't left the intrusion. So that's different. Everywhere else, we see the intrusion stop in the near end sediments, but here, I mean, it's a couple hundred meters of excess intrusion, which again, I think just points back to the idea that maybe this is more vertical here. Whereas Tamarack, everything else at Tamarack is at about 15-degree dip. But here it looks like it's probably 80 or so.
Okay. So then what is the next plan of action at the Vault Zone, and what are the 3 drill rigs doing right now?
Yeah, well, it's pretty simple. The next plan of attack is really to drill, step outs around the known massive sulfides and see if we can A, make them bigger, and then B, identify where they're going. We only have one hole in each of those, and each of those hits, the hole 250, 565, and 563, those are all kind of different. 250 is a little bit higher up. It's off to the side from 563, which is the beautiful 35-meter hit. And then 565 was more of a mixed massive sulfide. And I think that one might be more of a vertical, things are moving in that one. So again, as things are draining, we may have caught 565 in the process of draining down to the deeper areas. So we need to get holes on all 4 sides of each of those, figure out where they're going. I think that will generate additional targets, and we'll keep expanding those. But then after that, it's twofold. It's drill deeper and look for the next pod. If you look at that last figure, I think it's a pretty good tune that shows a pod draining down another pod, and I think that's how you can kind of think of like 565 as the draining down, and then you hit these pods like 250 or 563. And then lastly, for the winter program, I'm dying to drill that MT anomaly to the east and just see what that is, because if we hit intrusion over there, then you've opened up a whole new area and another chapter in that Tamarack story.
So the 3 rigs right now are on the southern portion of the Vault Zone, and they're drilling these wedge holes from 50 and 63 and 65.
Yeah, so we have our directional drilling contractor backed. We've got 2 kind of wedges complete, and we're drilling away at those targets. And each rig of the 3 rigs, one is on 250, one's on 565, and one's on 563.
I see. And you basically need to cover all 4 sides of each area, is that right?
Yeah, when you have one hole, you really don't know where it's going, because when you're in massive sulfide, it's very difficult to see outside. And this is a nuance that I think, I don't know how many people really get this, that you do need geophysical holes. You need holes that are in clean rocks so you can look.
You can see the contrast.
Exactly, yeah. And so when you're in the sulfides, like, it's great. I mean, obviously it's good to be in the sulfides, but it doesn't help geophysics at all. So we need some holes outside to shine the flashlight back and understand where it is. Where's the target?
I see. Okay. So, I think, and this is something that I spoke to you about when I was there in person in September, is that a lot of retail investors don't really understand this process, and there's a method to it, and it's a very exact process that you guys have refined over the last decade there at Tamarack, and you follow it because it works. I mean, 90% hit rate is essentially unheard of in the junior mining sector. I mean, most companies would be thrilled with a 20% hit rate, quite frankly. Now, obviously, we're usually talking about a gold project, so it's a little different. But I think that the time and care you put into putting together the model and planning each individual step out hole shows in the hit rate.
Yeah, and the way that we think about it is spending a little more time ensuring that you're confident on the data pays for itself in spades compared to missing a hole, especially as we're getting deep like this. If you were drilling CGO East to CGO West and the holes take 4 or 5 days, it's not a big deal. But these holes, if you're drilling from surface, can take up to like 5 weeks. And so you really need to trust your geophysics, because 5 weeks is a long time, as you know. So yeah, the process has gotten us this far. I think we just trust the process and keep doing it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Is there any thought or possibility of adding a fourth rig later in this program? Is it possible to get a fourth crew?
Yeah, so we own 5. One rig is out for refurbishment right now. They'll be back probably in February. And then the fourth rig is, I always like having a spare rig in case something happens. You have a catastrophic engine failure or something like that, you can swap it out and not lose any time. But we are hiring, so we're looking to ramp up. And yeah, I'd like to get up to 4 for sure.
Okay. So the big MT anomaly to the east, I mean, you said you can't wait to drill it. I can't wait for you to drill it. I know a lot of investors can't wait for you to drill it. Tell us a little bit about that. What do you think the timing of that is going to be? Is that just going to be a one rig thing where you poke 1 or 2 holes and see what you come up with and then go from there?
Yeah, it'll be one. It's a proof of concept hole. MT, I think you have to be a little, I'm always skeptical of MT. It is the most nebulous of the geophysical survey methods, I would say. And we're spoiled with EM because it works so well here. But it's, if we're hitting in the vault, I think it's going to be very difficult to send a rig up there. So I think, best case, well, not best case scenario, but soonest time scenario would be this winter. We could probably send a rig up there and extend a hole that's already, partway drilled.
So that means February.
Yeah. Yeah. But if we're having success in the vault zone, I'm not going to send a rig up there.
Yeah. So, success in the vault zone would mean you're just hitting more massive sulfides in just about every hole, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that makes sense. If you're, if you've got 3 rigs going and it's working and you're hitting 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3, why would you divert to drill, a big MT anomaly? That can always be drilled later, right?
Yeah, we can drill that any time of the year. So it's an easy access. Everything's flat. It's pretty straightforward. So it's a target we have in the quiver. We have a few other things that we want to drill at some point, but I think we're pretty deep into 2026 planning at this point.
Okay. And you had a few news releases. Actually, you've had 4 news releases since October 1st. And one of them was the extension with Kennecott to ensure the alignment of the feasibility study with the environmental review process. Tell us a little bit about the feasibility study, what the timing of that is now. Does the drilling at the vault zone affect the timing of the feasibility study?
No, it's the timing is pretty close to the same. I think we're targeting first half of next year, something like that. The extension just buys us a little bit of breathing room, and Rio is totally on board with you. The biggest thing that you can do is make sure that your EIS and your FS are speaking the same language. You don't want things to be different between the 2 documents. So it makes a lot of sense to ensure that they kind of happen at the same time. So that's really all it is. I wouldn't expect us to take anywhere near the full allotted time on that. It's just ensuring that we didn't have a gap in between them.
Okay. So the vault zone doesn't affect it?
No. Okay. Well, yeah, there's not enough time to get the vault zone in there.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about scale, a little pie in the sky, speculative conversation about the scale potential at Tamarack. Look, you're about a little over 17 million tons now, but that was based upon a resource that was put out in 2022. A lot of drilling has happened in the last 3 years, and there's more drilling to come. A lot of people use Voisey's Bay as a comparison. I mean, it's a nice comp, obviously. Voisey's Bay is about 4 times the size that Tamarack is right now. Is it possible for Tamarack to grow to something as big as a Voisey's Bay?
Yeah, I would say yes. The thing with Tamarack, you need to remember is Tamarack is essentially a district. So we're exploring like half a mile in here. But if you go a mile to the north, you have the Raptor Zone. We have, 9% nickel, almost 10% nickel, a mile and 2 miles to the north. If you go to the south, we have the Log Camp Zone, which is about a kilometer to the south that also has massive sulfides. The entire Tamarack intrusion, so the host rock that could have, the mineralization is about 13 miles or 18 kilometers long. And we're focused on the main zone, that half mile. The other aspect of this, and this is what we're seeing now with the vault zone, is that's thinking in 2D. We need to think in 3D. And that's something that we haven't really had the luxury of time to look at, but the vault is really pulling us down and saying, you guys should look a little bit deeper. The other thing with drainage models, and this is where, actually Voisey's Bay is similar. Voisey's Bay is a big pool of sulfides that was fed through a dike, and the sulfides kind of got pushed up and then fell into this pool. You could do it the other way around, where you have a drain and your sulfides are draining down into what I always call a plunge pool, like a waterfall plunge pool. And so we know sulfides have drained at Tamarack, but we don't know how many sulfides have drained. And that's the question is, the pods that we're hitting, are those, is that the pool, or is that just something that got saved as everything was draining down? I think it's the latter. But yeah, we're going to need more work. I've always said I think we'll be exploring here longer than I'll be alive. The prospectivity of Tamarack is quite high.
Wow. Okay. So, there was a section of the news release that focused on the copper, which was basically 90 meters of 1.9% copper equivalent in hole 563. And that was a new assay result because, I guess that portion of the core was sent in later and it got stuck in a backlog. So that's very interesting to me because now we're not just talking about 30 or 35 meters of massive sulfides of extraordinary grade. We're talking about, well, there's mineable and clearly economic grades that are extending above and possibly, underneath the really, really exceptional massive sulfide zone. So how does the copper here, this hypogene enrichment, affect the potential mineable scale of the vault zone?
No, I think that's a great question. There's I think two different things going on here. We have the 138 zone that sits on top, and that's what the intercept was going through the 138 zone, and then we hit the vault zone underneath. So that's what gave us that beautiful 390 meter long interval. And then you have this secondary enrichment of the chalcocite, adding the copper down below. If it is, a true hypogene, it's coming from something. So something is adding copper as a fluid phase, and we're just not deep enough yet to understand where that is. But if you wear your porphyry hat, that's how we kind of need to start thinking is what sort of intrusions or what sort of fluid events could produce that copper, and where do we go to find that? So we talked about stacked massive sulfides, but we might have stacked intrusions as well that are shutting off some of this metal.
Stacked. So yeah. So as we're getting a little bit into the weeds here, you're obviously much more of an expert than I am, but I know just enough to be dangerous. So is there a way that you can age date some of this and maybe try to understand if there was a later pulse that generated this, hypogene enrichment?
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things we're looking at doing is fluid inclusion work, where you take some thin sections, you look for bubbles that still have fluids, and then you can heat them up, and they turn into a liquid, and that's how you can gauge like the temperature and the timing of when these things occurred.
So yeah, it's possible that this was magmatically, active for several million years, or maybe even like 10 million years, and there were just multiple intrusive phases with these fluids pulsing through, huh?
Well, yeah. So we actually know from age dating that Tamarack seems to have been active for about 2 million years. That's really long. Like Norilsk is about 1 million, and other intrusions are substantially less. That really shows itself in the heat budget as well. So in addition to the age date, like just when you're logging the core, you can tell like Tamarack has a lot of heat. And that's a really important part of the story because the melted sediments around the CGO is where the massive sulfide goes. So you have to, at Tamarack, you must melt your sediments, and then your dense massive sulfides will wiggle their way down in that Goldilocks zone of melted sediments. So heat is a really important part, and that's one of the things in the vault zone is we're seeing more heat there than we've ever seen before. So again, it goes to this idea that Tamarack was active for a very long time, and some of the best deposits in the world have been active for a very long time.
Okay, so staying with the vault zone, the 3 rigs are drilling wedges off of 50, 63, and 65 now. But in the news release, you made it very clear that there's an entire area with no drilling to the northern side of the CGO at Vault. When do you plan to start testing that area?
Yeah, that would be winter. I mean, we're pretty well set with the number of targets to get us into, I'd say probably February right now. And that assumes we don't generate any new targets. That was one of the surprising things when we drilled 248 is that, that long intercept of intrusion, we didn't expect it to be there. We actually thought it would be to the south. We kind of thought we were on the northern side. And then we drilled that and realized, oh, we're not on the northern side at all. So yeah, that northern side I think is wide open. And if you look at Tamarack proper, you see kind of the same thing. The massive sulfide tubes are on both sides of the CGO dike, in the Goldilocks zone and the sediments. So I think, the way that I think about the vault zone is it really is a brand new project. We started with no holes in here. We extended a hole to get down to this range. We don't have any historical holes that get down here on their own. And we have to think as if this is a brand new project and we don't know anything. And that's why we gotta get some holes down and drill.
And then the potential for testing this thing to 1,000 or more meters at depth, I guess that's in the cards too, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 3 of our 5 rigs can go that deep, so shouldn't be an issue. Well, and I mean, our rigs can. We've drilled a 1.6 kilometer hole earlier, so we can drill deep.
When you drill a deep hole, when you drill a hole that's like 1,000 meters, what causes you, like, what do you want to see to keep it going, at depth? Because obviously, look, it takes a long time to drill a hole that deep, as we know. It's also a lot more expensive. Yeah, like, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything more stressful than drilling a deep hole. When we do it, we need to have a really good target. We have to have a really good reason to drill the hole. And I think the biggest key in drilling a deep hole is don't quit too soon. It gets challenging when you get deep, and I've seen this many, many times before where people will stop just before. And it's hard and it's stressful, but if you've committed to drilling the target, you have to test the target. There are clues that we can look for. Like I said, heat is a great one at Tamarack. When you're looking for partial melts, you're looking for secondary minerals in the sediments, but you just have to finish it. It's going to take time. You just have to do it.
You just have to do it. And so, at least one of those kind of holes is definitely in the cards for this phase of drilling.
Yeah, and the nice thing, because we do have a number of holes that are, pre-drilled, it doesn't cost us that much to drill a deep hole. And the other thing is, we have in-house crews, so our costs are already a fraction of what it would be for a contractor. So we can test a deep hole for probably the cost of what someone would pay to test a shallow, moderate hole.
Okay. And now, I just have 2 more questions for you, and then I'll let you go, Brian. Look, investors always want to know the cadence of news releases. Obviously, I know it's tricky, but now that you're well into this thing, you've got 3 rigs turning. Do you think it's fair for us to expect one set of updates on assays per month from here on?
Well, assays are tricky. I don't know that I could commit to assays per month. We can, I mean, with 3 rigs, we're going to have news coming out. And then there's all the other stuff that's going on as well, the feasibility study. I think some of the environmental and permitting. So there's a lot going on. Exploration is just one part of it. Assays are tough. The labs are, I haven't seen labs backed up this bad since COVID. And it blows my mind. Like, I know the investors are knocking on the door about assays. I can tell you, like, no one is more wants to see these things more than me. And if I haven't seen them, then yeah, we're not withholding them. I can tell you that.
Okay, fair enough. And then the final question. Look, you put out a news release October 16th on donating core sample to the Smithsonian. Obviously, that's a great honor. And I guess that's going to happen here in the next month or so. You're actually going to go to Washington, D.C. and do that and have some photo ops. That'll probably be another news release by itself. But obviously, look, you've got support from the DOW now, and that's already in place now for more than a year. But obviously, look, we have a new administration that's actually making investments into mining companies here in 2025. And Talon is pretty much the only game in town for nickel in the U.S. So what are the chances that something occurs there in terms of an investment by the Trump administration?
Yeah, we'll just have to see. I think if you looked at the past couple of press releases, we talked, well, there's one a couple times ago, I guess, where we talked about, Department of War obviously is funding some of the exploration, but there's been a little bit of a pivot to funding permitting and, the engineering and not permitting, the feasibility. So the engineering and some of the environmental things that go into it. So I think it's to me, it's a pretty clear message that critical minerals are really important, and we need to, it's one thing to find them, but we also need to get them up and running. So I don't know. It's a great time to be in nickel. I'm super excited to go to the Smithsonian. Like I've said, like, as a science nerd growing up, I spent so much time in museums, and being able to have something that we've generated in there, I think is just one of the coolest things. So yeah, quite keen to go out there and donate that.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time, Brian. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Robert.